I was sued by my parents for money in court, and the moment it became clear that they couldn't get it, my stepbrother became violent. I've been through many painful experiences, and though it's difficult to look back on them, I want to take this opportunity to share my story in hopes of lightening the burden on my heart, even if just a little. At 28, this is the first time I'm opening up publicly about myself. I hope this story can offer support to anyone feeling isolated. Since I was a child, I always felt lonely within my family. My parents, Sophia and Daniel, were different from typical parents. In my memory, they were both physically and emotionally abusive, causing much of my pain and suffering. I have 2 younger sisters, making me the eldest of 3. While my parents treated my sisters gently, for some reason I was always the target of their anger and frustration. Fearful moments are deeply etched in my memories. My parents would insult and beat me under the guise of discipline. When I was 5, I tried to pour myself a glass of milk, but I didn't manage to do it properly. My father, seeing this, became furious. He grabbed my arm, dragged me into the living room, and pushed me onto the sofa, scolding me, saying, "How can you not even do something as simple as that?" My mother was also there, but she just stood by and watched. Things like this were an everyday occurrence in our household. From kindergarten through high school, school life was also challenging. I was bullied, and the other students knew about my situation at home too. Unlike other children, I couldn't feel the happiness they did. I wasn't allowed to have new clothes and often wore worn-out clothes, which made me a target for ridicule. Even when I wanted to play games with others, I was ridiculed and wasn't even allowed to join. I tried to talk to a teacher about it, but they didn't believe me and didn't seem interested in getting involved. When I entered middle school, the situation worsened. One of the most unforgettable events happened in 7th grade. A group of girls ambushed me in the bathroom, mocking my appearance, shoving me to the ground, pulling my hair, and hurling insults at me. When I tried to escape, one of them grabbed my backpack and threw all my books and belongings into the toilet. They laughed as they humiliated me, and all I could do was stand there, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't confide in anyone about what happened. I understood that standing up for myself would only make things worse. The situation continued even as I moved on to high school. The bullying became even more cunning and cruel, subjecting me not only to physical harassment, but also driving me to emotional despair. My classmates targeted me, spreading malicious rumors about me on social media, with messages that seemed to suggest I should disappear. One day, I found a note in my locker. "No one would be sad if you died." The words of that note have stayed with me to this day. I couldn't get those words out of my head and carried that note with me for weeks. I was completely isolated, with no one to turn to for support. My life at home during high school was also a nightmare. The abuse from my parents only worsened. They constantly put me down, telling me I was someone who could accomplish nothing. My father was consumed by alcohol, and I could never predict when his anger would explode. It was pure fear. One night, he came home drunk, furious that dinner wasn't prepared. When I explained that I had class and couldn't cook, he suddenly slapped me across the face. The impact made everything go white for a moment. As always, my mother didn't intervene. Instead, she scolded me, saying it was my fault for making him angry. Somehow, I managed to get into college, thinking that I could finally cut ties with my past and start a new life. But the scars in my heart ran deep. I lacked confidence in myself and didn't know how to navigate a normal environment. It was as if I were a shell of a person. From the very first day, college life presented numerous challenges. I found it difficult to make friends or trust others, and by the second year, I was constantly anxious about what the next ordeal would be. My roommate was a person named Jessica. At first, she seemed nice, but soon she revealed her true colors, criticizing my appearance and lifestyle. Knowing that I had early morning classes, she would invite her friends over and throw loud parties that lasted late into the night. When I pointed it out, she just looked at me, laughed, and said, "You should really relax more." One day, when I returned to the dorm, I found the room locked. I had no choice but to sleep in the common living room. However, the next day, she acted as if nothing had happened. There were some positive aspects of college, and a few professors showed concern for me. One of them, Professor Adams, sensed that I was struggling and offered to give me private tutoring sessions. He was incredibly kind and patient, and for the first time I felt I could rely on someone. Thanks to his support, I was able to graduate without failing any courses. However, the wounds from my childhood and adolescence were deeply ingrained. After graduating, I moved to a new town to start a new life. I began working in marketing and tried to move forward, but the traumas of the past continued to haunt me. Building relationships was difficult, and I often found myself in troubling situations. My self-esteem plummeted, and I struggled with depression and anxiety. I eventually met a therapist who supported me, and I began treatment. Thus began the long journey of healing, gradually easing the pain in my heart. One of the toughest challenges was talking about my parents and the abuse. It took me several years to gather the courage, but I finally took action. I wrote a long letter to my parents, detailing what they had done to me and the impact it had on my life. As expected, there was no apology from them. Instead, my mother responded by returning the letter, saying that I was being excessive and ungrateful. My father, on the other hand, showed no reaction, but writing the letter lifted a bit of the weight off my heart. It was a way for me to release a part of my trauma. I am still working hard to heal myself. There are good days and bad days. One of the best decisions I made was to cut off contact with my parents. I was also able to build a small network of people who understand my past and trust me. I can trust people again and feel that I am worth seeking happiness. The road is still long, but I'm moving forward one step at a time. When I first met Dr. Smith, my therapist, I was in a very unstable state. I remember the first session as clearly as if it were yesterday. I was so nervous and anxious that I couldn't even look at her face. Still, Dr. Smith was patient and created a safe environment where I felt comfortable sharing my feelings. After a few sessions, I was able to talk about my childhood. Whenever she spoke to me in her gentle voice, I always looked down. One of the most important moments in my treatment was when Dr. Smith talked about compassion and asked me how I would treat a friend who had gone through the same situation. Would I condemn them or see them as worthless? I would never feel that way. I would treat them with compassion and kindness. She told me that I needed to treat myself in the same way. It was a new feeling for me, but it gradually led to a new way of thinking about myself. We used various techniques to address past trauma, including eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. EMDR was a challenging process for me. It required me to recall my most painful memories. But at the same time, I felt it was incredibly effective. Through therapy, I began to feel lighter and more positive. I was considering building a career in marketing. After graduating from college, I joined a marketing company. While I wanted to demonstrate my abilities, my lack of confidence held me back. The first few months at the company were memorable. I was pouring all my efforts into a campaign proposal for a new client. I was excited to present my ideas in the meeting, but my manager, Mr. Thompson, repeatedly interrupted me, questioning my ideas and causing me to lose confidence. I left the meeting in shock, reflecting on what I might be lacking. Dr. Smith helped me analyze the incident. She taught me that Mr. Thompson's behavior said more about him than it did about me. He was known for being critical and harsh, often using his position to undermine others. With her guidance, I was able to clearly present my ideas the next time, supporting my proposal with solid data and standing by my position even in the face of opposition. It was incredibly difficult, but that experience helped me build confidence. Furthermore, I was entrusted with larger projects and I was growing significantly. I understood that facing challenges head-on was essential for overcoming them, so I took on difficult tasks. Then came a campaign to revamp a major client's brand, the largest project I had ever been involved in. This assignment involved significant risks, and along with motivation, I also felt a sense of anxiety. I spent countless hours conducting research, brainstorming ideas, and examining them from various angles, revising them over and over. On the day of the presentation to the client, I felt a level of nervousness I had never experienced before. Surprisingly, however, the presentation went smoothly, and the client highly praised my proposal. Moreover, even Mr. Thompson, who had previously been critical, acknowledged my achievement. This was my greatest success and a pivotal moment in my career. I began to feel confident in myself and my abilities. Outside of work, I realized I could accomplish more than I had thought possible. I was also steadily growing in my personal life. Dr. Smith encouraged me to actively explore hobbies and art. I started drawing again, an activity I had enjoyed as a child, and found joy in it. When I joined a local art class, I experienced an incredible sense of healing. It was a way to express myself beyond words and to transform my emotions into something beautiful. Furthermore, I started building a support network. I joined an online community that supports victims of abuse, and connecting with others who had similar experiences provided me with emotional support. We shared our experiences, supported one another, and celebrated each other's successes. Even these small connections were invaluable to my healing process. At work, new challenges awaited, providing opportunities to test my abilities. A new colleague named Lisa joined us. Mr. Thompson held her in high regards. She seemed intelligent, confident, and capable of anything. I feared her presence and felt uneasy about my own significance fading away. It was as though I had returned to my old fear of inadequacy and lack of self-confidence. Dr. Smith helped me work through and overcome these feelings. She taught me that Lisa's success didn't diminish my own value and explained that by cooperating and supporting each other, we could achieve better results for everyone. I took the initiative to offer my support for Lisa's project. To my surprise, she gladly accepted my offer and actively incorporated my suggestions. Together, we achieved great results, and I learned a lot from her. It was an experience that taught me the value of teamwork and the importance of mutual encouragement. As my career progressed, I was given leadership responsibilities and received a promotion. I became a project manager and was entrusted with overseeing a team. This was a significant advancement for me, and I strove to support and encourage my team as a leader. I held regular meetings, ensuring everyone had a chance to share their ideas and opinions freely. I prioritized recognizing and celebrating the team's achievements, even the small ones. Watching the team grow and succeed was an incredibly fulfilling experience. One particularly memorable project was a nationwide advertising campaign for a new product launch. It was a large-scale project with high expectations and a tight deadline. Though I anticipated challenges, I was excited for the opportunity to showcase my abilities. I assembled a talented team and worked closely with them to create a creative and impactful campaign. We worked late into the night each day, and there were moments of anxiety, but we remained united and completed the project together. As a result, the campaign was a tremendous success. The product launch exceeded expectations, and the client was thrilled. The campaign received industry attention and even won an award, marking one of the proudest moments of my career. It was a moment when all the years of hard work and perseverance paid off. Through this experience, I reaffirmed the importance of believing in myself and my own abilities. Dr. Smith always provided support and guidance, teaching me that recovery isn't a straight path, and that setbacks are also part of growth. At times, it felt like starting over, but she reminded me of my achievements and helped me keep moving forward. Among the programs we did, one stood out and resonated deeply with me. It was a therapy exercise in which I wrote a letter to my younger self. Dr. Smith suggested that I write down everything I wished that young girl, who endured so much, had known back then. It was an emotionally stirring experience for me, but it became a way to free my heart. I told my past self that she had a strong and resilient spirit and was deserving of love and happiness. I assured her that the abuse she experienced was never her fault and that a wonderful future awaited her. This letter allowed me to look at myself from a new perspective, reaffirming that overcoming suffering requires inner strength. Now I am living in a much better environment, enjoying life. I've learned to protect my boundaries and to cherish my happiness. My career continues to grow, and I now mentor newcomers to the industry. Being in a position to guide others and help them overcome their own challenges brings me immense fulfillment. Looking back, I can see just how far I have come. The journey of healing continues, but I feel that even a difficult path is worth taking, one step at a time. I've learned that sometimes it's essential to rely on others and allow them to support me while treating myself with kindness. I've also realized I possess more strength than I once thought. Life gradually moved in a positive direction. My career was going well, I maintained healthy boundaries with harmful people, and I continued therapy. Just when I felt I had finally overcome the past, a letter arrived, shattering that sense of hope. To my shock, I was being sued by my parents. The reason for the lawsuit was absurd. They claimed I should repay the costs of raising me. Furthermore, they said that once the trial was over, they planned to request financial support from me to help raise my adopted stepbrother, Jacob, making me feel as though all the independence and growth I had achieved was being denied. I resolved to stand up against this. The court date was set for Monday morning, and although I felt anxious, I entered the courtroom with a strong sense of self-belief. I sat on the opposite side from my parents. Next to me was my lawyer, Mr. Grant, while Jacob, my unfamiliar stepbrother, sat confidently by my parents' side. Although Mr. Grant assured me that our position was strong, my anxiety didn't fade. The first day of the trial was grueling. My parents' lawyer, Mr. Edwards, confidently laid out their case, arguing that my parents had shouldered substantial financial burdens for my sake and that it was necessary to compensate them. He described my parents as loving and devoted. When it was our turn, Mr. Grant calmly dismantled their claims, presenting some evidence of the abuse I had suffered. He strongly asserted, using my therapy records and testimonies from witnesses of their behavior, that I had no obligation to support my stepbrother. That week was intense, with the courtroom turning into a battleground, each day presenting new challenges and waves of emotion. On Tuesday, my mother took the stand, shedding tears with a dramatic performance. She tearfully claimed that she had always dedicated herself to me and couldn't understand why I felt abused. Despite my anger at her false tears, I remained composed. Then, on Wednesday, my father's testimony began. During his testimony, he took an aggressive stance, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. He even raised his voice in anger, directing his fury at me from the witness stand. The judge intervened, warning him about his attitude and instructing him to remain calm. Mr. Grant skillfully exposed the inconsistencies in his testimony. Thursday was the hardest day for me. Jacob took the stand. He was a teenager, probably 16 or 17 years old. When he looked at me, his eyes were filled with hatred. He claimed that the lack of support from my side had deprived him of proper education and opportunities. It was clear that my parents had instilled a sense of malice toward me in him, and it was painful to see someone so young harboring such intense anger. By Friday, I was utterly exhausted, but I took the stand with a sense of determination. The composed and supportive Mr. Grant guided me through my testimony, helping me speak about the abuse I had endured and the many years I had been manipulated. I explained the trauma from my past and the steps I had taken to overcome it. At that moment, I noticed the jury. They were listening intently, and some of them were visibly moved by my story. The weekend passed quickly with preparations and tension leading up to the final day of the trial. It was clear that Monday would be crucial for us. Mr. Grant and I meticulously prepared, ready to address any statements Mr. Edwards might make. When Monday arrived, the courtroom was filled with a palpable sense of tension. Mr. Edwards gave his closing argument, strongly asserting that my parents were the victims. In response, Mr. Grant delivered a powerful speech, reminding the jury of the abuse I had endured and emphasizing that my parents bore responsibility for it. During this, my parents remained silent. A long period passed, and the jury left the courtroom to deliberate. Each tick of the clock heightened the unbearable tension as time weighed heavily on us. Eventually, the jury returned, and the verdict was finally delivered. I had won. An overwhelming sense of relief filled my heart, and I realized that I had triumphed before my parents. As the judge announced the verdict, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. At that very moment, an unexpected event occurred. Jacob, who had shown uncontrollable anger throughout the trial, suddenly ran toward me. He was holding a baseball bat. The courtroom erupted in chaos, and someone screamed. He swung the bat at me. I managed to dodge, but the bat grazed my arm, sending a sharp pain through me. The security guards forcefully restrained Jacob, pinning him to the ground as he screamed in a fit of rage. The courtroom was in turmoil, with people trying to grasp what had just happened amid the confusion. Mr. Grant and the security guards quickly escorted me out of the courtroom. Once outside, my heart was pounding, and it took a moment to regain my composure. The adrenaline was still surging through my body, and a dull pain lingered in the arm where the bat had struck. Mr. Grant promptly arranged for an ambulance, and I was taken to the hospital for evaluation. Fortunately, the injury wasn't severe, but the incident was a shocking experience for me. Jacob's outburst only worsened the situation, and my parents claimed it was my fault for intentionally provoking him, trying to dismiss his actions as nothing more than childish tantrums, hoping to turn the incident to their advantage. However, Jacob's assault had been clearly captured on the courtroom surveillance cameras. Jacob was immediately taken into custody. Although my parents tried to distort the incident to suit their narrative, within days, the media began to take interest, with reporters seeking details about the trial and Jacob. I refused all interviews, focusing instead on healing and rebuilding a positive life. During this time, Mr. Grant arranged for a restraining order against my parents and Jacob. Although the shock of the assault lingered, they would never be able to come near me again. I felt that, through the trial, I had confronted my past and was finally able to close that chapter. I had won the case, and I continued seeing Dr. Smith for counseling afterward. She helped me calmly process the recent events and confront the residual fears and anxieties in my heart. She reminded me that I was now steering my own life and was no longer a victim. Through this experience, I gained an even stronger resilience. I became an advocate for others who had suffered from abuse, sharing my experiences in support groups and online talks. My work was going well, and I felt a profound sense of accomplishment in helping others heal their emotional wounds. Then, a few months later, a special opportunity arose. After the trial, I was invited to speak at an event for people facing adversity, where I shared my story from the stage with an audience. At that moment, I realized that it's not the past events that shape us, but rather the strength to confront them and the belief in ourselves. Life is far from perfect, and I still encounter difficulties, but I am now certain that I can overcome any trial. This experience has strengthened my heart immensely. I am now determined to help others find their own strength based on my own experiences. Following the incident in court, Jacob was arrested and charged with assault. The security camera had clearly captured the moment he attacked me, leaving undeniable evidence. The trial proceeded quickly, and given his age and the severity of the assault, a guilty verdict was reached. As a result, he was sent to a juvenile detention center. The judge determined that Jacob's deep-seated issues stemmed from the influence of our parents and mandated therapy for him. The impact of Jacob's actions reverberated through the entire family, Child Protective Services, CPS, stepped in and began a detailed investigation into whether my parents were fit to raise children. The abuse I had suffered, as well as the lack of proper support and environment provided to Jacob, came to light, exposing the harsh realities of the household. CPS concluded that my parents were unfit to continue parenting and decided to revoke their legal guardianship rights. Jacob entered a rehabilitation program in the juvenile center, and the other foster children in my parents' care were also removed for their protection. This unexpected development stirred many emotions within me. I felt that the time had finally come for my parents to face the consequences of their actions, and I felt validated in my position. At the same time, it was painful to witness the severe impact my parents had on Jacob. I hoped he would find healing amid the turmoil and discover a path to a brighter future. Through therapy, I found my own healing. Dr. Smith, my therapist, became a reliable source of support as I coped with the aftermath of the trial and the assault. She encouraged me to focus on the positive changes in my life and to build a future rather than being held back by the past. Thanks to her, I began opening my heart to new relationships. Though I had once been cautious with others, I realized that connection with people was essential to the healing process. It was around this time that I met John. We were introduced through a mutual friend at a dinner party. He was gentle, humorous, and incredibly kind, and we quickly became close, forming a deep bond. We shared a similar passion for art and travel. I had never felt such a profound connection with someone before. Our friendship soon evolved into something deeper, and we began dating. However, our relationship also faced its challenges. I opened up to John about my past. He trusted me to an astonishing degree, yet I sometimes still felt anxious and worried. Trusting someone wasn't easy for me, and there were times when I felt overwhelmed by my insecurities. But he was always patient, consistently willing to talk things through to understand me, easing my anxieties. Around 6 months into our relationship, an unforgettable moment occurred. We had planned a short weekend trip to a mountain cabin, intending to unwind and relax away from everyday life. However, on the first night, I had a nightmare about being attacked in the courtroom. I woke up in terror, and John rushed over to me as I panicked. He held me gently as I cried, comforting me by saying, "It's okay, I'm here with you." At that moment, I realized my feelings for him were unwavering. I knew he was more than just a partner. He was someone who genuinely cherished me and would always be there to support me. I began envisioning a future with John. We shared our dreams and goals and discovered that we held the same values. As our relationship reached its 1-year mark, John planned a date reminiscent of our first, ending with a proposal. Our engagement period was filled with days of excitement for the future. We held a warm wedding, surrounded by close friends and family. On our wedding day, in a beautiful garden filled with blooming flowers, we exchanged our vows in the presence of our loved ones. As I stood holding John's hand, looking into his eyes, I felt peace and joy I had never experienced before. The ceremony became a time to celebrate love and resilience. Friends from my support group, colleagues, and professors who had supported me during college attended, including Professor Adams, whose presence was a delightful surprise. He had encouraged me throughout my studies, and it was a precious moment to celebrate this special day together. It was a symbol of the new family I was building, based on choice and mutual respect. One of the most memorable moments of the ceremony was Lisa's heartfelt speech at the reception. Lisa, too, had overcome her own struggles, and through her speech, we reaffirmed our bond. She spoke proudly of my growth, my newfound happiness, and the strong path I was now walking. Her words brought tears to my eyes, and her friendship and support became a cornerstone in my married life. After the wedding, John and I started our new life together. We found a comfortable apartment and began decorating it with art pieces and memories we shared, envisioning our future. We traveled together, found new hobbies, and continued supporting each other's dreams. John encouraged me to pursue art more seriously, which led me to pick up my paintbrush again. I even held a small solo exhibition locally. It was a significant step for me. Work was going well too, and I was promoted to a senior position. As a new project manager, my responsibilities increased, but I was eager to take on new challenges. One of the largest projects I led was a marketing campaign for a nonprofit organization focused on mental health awareness. This project held special meaning for me, and I poured my heart into it. The campaign was successful, raising awareness and funding for mental health services. It was incredibly fulfilling to know that my work had a positive impact on the world. As time passed, John and I began discussing expanding our family and made the decision to adopt a child. We both wanted to restore the love and support that each of us had once lost. The adoption process was long and sometimes frustrating, but it was worth every moment. We were finally united with a lovely little girl named Mia. The moment we welcomed her into our family was an irreplaceable, joyful experience for us. Mia brought so much happiness and light into our lives. Parenthood was a fresh and exciting challenge, and John and I continued to provide loving support, navigating the sleepless nights and the joys and sorrows of Mia's growth together. In doing so, we were able to break the cycle of abuse and neglect we had experienced, providing her with a nurturing environment. Her smiles and curiosity constantly remind me of the new life I've built from my past experiences. I continued attending therapy, with Dr. Smith remaining a steadfast source of support. She became an essential figure in helping me balance work and parenting, sharing strategies to navigate life's ups and downs. Her guidance was invaluable to me, and without her support, I wouldn't have come this far. Looking back, I see how I've grown from a frightened child living in fear of abuse to someone confident, surrounded by a loving family. I never imagined my life would turn out this way. Though there remains a bit of the old pain, it has become part of my story. A symbol of healing, resilience, and hope for the future.